The agricultural tie-ins, I believe, run deep into the land. Nathan Meeker had an idea of a utopian community that would be based on agriculture.
When Nathan Meeker founded Greeley, he founded on 7 founding principles, 2 of which were essential for the success of the colony, which became the town of Greeley: agriculture and irrigation. Without the irrigation, agriculture would not work because this is a very dry area. Without agriculture, there would be no community. Without agriculture, we don't eat. And so this site really represents, and I think just shows how important agriculture was to Greeley's development, for Greeley to be able to survive, grow, and even thrive as it does today. The brick buildings were built in approximately 1907 and 1908, and there were actually 3 places the companies that built it were from: Greeley, Gilchrist, and Denver, and they cost a total of $41,000 to build. Back then, that was a lot of money. It was built for Empson Packing Company originally. Empson was started by John Howard Empson, who started a canning company for local produce in Longmont in 1889. He canned peas, corn, pumpkin, and cash crops. He expanded the business, and later then it built its site in 1907-08 at Greeley, and he also built one in Fort Collins. Later, the Kuhner Packing Company got involved. Kuhner was originally the Kuhner Pickle Company that was started by John and Max Kuhner.
The Kuhner story had its origin in Denver, with its manufacturing plant there as the main one. But they also had branch factories in Brighton and Platteville and Greeley as well.
Max had expanded the product line after he bought his brother out, and expanded it to include things like apple butter, vinegar, mustard, pork and beans. So they really were a much more broad focus on lots of different canned foods. And then after John Empson passed away, Max Kuhner's grandson, Carl Kuhner Meyer, purchased this property and merged the 2. It became Kuhner Empson Company.
The Kuhner family employed hundreds of people, but then in addition, that included 1,000 more in supporting businesses and things like transportation, shippers, and had branches all through the community, with how deep it affected the economy here.
They closed the plant down in the early 60s, and my dad, Paul Hoshiko Jr., who was born here in Weld County in the early 20s, a farmer and agricultural entrepreneur, acquired the building in 1964. And that's when he proceeded to convert it to storage and packaging and shipping of dry onions, which we did, our family did, under a company named Northweld Produce Company for 50 years until 2014. When I decided to curtail operations. But the buildings themselves were built in 1908, which is the same year that my grandfather, Hoshiko, immigrated to the United States from Japan. My grandfather's birth name from Japan was Katsuma, but when he immigrated to America, he connected with some missionaries who were Japanese and had converted to Christianity. And so they told my granddad about Jesus and about the Bible and about the Apostle Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament. So granddad took on the name Paul as his American name, and then named his youngest son, who was my dad, Paul Jr. When my grandparents came to Weld County from Japan, they were penniless. And they were field workers, so they worked a lot of the land nearby, growing some of the vegetables that were processed here in that era. Over the course of my family's ownership of the property, we employed in totality thousands of people over that 50-year span. Seasonally, we would employ 50 people here, but we would employ over 100 people seasonally harvesting the onions, rolling the onions, and then storing them here and packaging. So we would ship the 10,000 tons of onions annually to our customers who were located across the country. My dad was not only a farmer and a produce wholesaler, but he was also a cattle feeder. This part of the county is very well known for cattle production, beef production, and he was very involved with that too. During the course of his career, he fed hundreds of thousands of cattle in local feedlots. He also was known nationally in the onion business. He was president of the National Onion Association, and he was instrumental in moving their national offices from Michigan, which is where they were first established, to Greeley, Colorado, which is where they still headquartered, the National Onion Association. He was also inducted into the Colorado Agricultural Hall of Fame, as well as the National 4-H Hall of Fame. He was an avid 4-H'er. I have a lot of very fond memories of all of the people that I worked with. Again, in total, both here at the produce company and on the farm, literally thousands of farm workers and packing plant workers and just salt of the earth people. And I always admired them. I always had great respect for them and viewed them as co-workers, never simply employees. They were my friends. North of us, that next block was vacant property that came along with this developed property, and my dad donated it to the city of Greeley in the mid-70s. There was no public park in North Greeley. This neighborhood is a mix of residential, industrial, commercial, so it was a very working class part of town, and there wasn't a whole lot of time for recreation, but Dad saw a need for the neighborhood to have a place where families could recreate and just enjoy time together. So he donated to the city, and they developed it into a park. And then later, the Rodarte Community Center was built there. And now it's one of the most used community centers in the whole city. This property has been owned by less than a handful of us since its history, which spans over a century. And there have been many thousands of people collectively that have worked here, including myself and other members of my family, and we've all benefited from that. But my wife Marcy and I decided when we curtailed our produce operation here, Weld Produce Company, that we wanted to do something to benefit those neighbors who are less fortunate than we are. And many of them can't provide housing for themselves. And we've seen that increase over the years, the decades that we've been here. And we wanted to do something proactive to help that situation improve. And so now we want to see this property converted to permanent housing for those who can't help themselves. And there are neighbors. And Jesus said many times throughout the Bible, love your neighbor as yourself. So that's when we prayed and decided that these buildings, to some extent, and the property in general, could be utilized for that purpose, for creating a housing for those neighbors who are less fortunate than we are.
I'm a person of faith. I'm a Christian, and I think we're called to serve the most needy. I've prayed a lot for this project and how the people that it's going to serve in this community specifically. And as this has all been coming together, a specific verse I came across when reading the Old Testament really spoke to me. It says in Psalm 12:5, because the poor are plundered, because the needy groan, I will now arise, says the Lord. I will place him in the safety for which he longs.
My dad was very community-minded. My grandparents, his parents, taught us to give back to the community whenever we could, because America and Weld County and Greeley had afforded them such opportunities they would have never experienced otherwise, to lead to a point where the property can be converted and repurposed for housing for folks like they were when they first came here. They were homeless. They relied on others to help them out until they could get established. And we want to do the same for our homeless neighbors.
What I see these historic buildings as being is a bridge between the old and the new. So this property has served this community, the agricultural community, and our economy for more than 100 years. These buildings will remain, and they'll provide that bridge between the old and the new. But I think both purposes of this property are equally important. This property supported our economy for a very long time, and now we are looking to be supporting our most needy neighbors.
We would probably forget things of our past if we didn't have these buildings as the physical reminder. These buildings represent significant success for agriculture at Greeley. And the fact that they're still standing, to me, that's a big success as well.
Older historic buildings create a sense of place and a story about what happened in the community before other people came. And every community has a story and a history and how it got to where it got. And buildings like this one that have that history with them, the agricultural background, the commercial part of benefiting the community, and that can be repurposed for another day, they create a sense of, oh, this has been here a while. This is important. This is a cornerstone of the community.
This Hoshko property being used for housing is just a natural extension of what it's been used for so many decades. It was used for food processing, for meeting our Greeley residents, their basic needs of food. And of course, housing is another basic need for our people. And what better use can we put an existing building to than housing? And having this repurposed and used for housing is just a natural extension of it meeting basic needs for so many decades. To be able to take and preserve a wonderful building and repurpose it, give it a new life, give it a new identity within the community, just takes and says, we're adding you to the fabric of our history because you're important, but you're going to help us tell a new story, help us fulfill a new vision for the people who live here.